Voice of the Sea, learning from experts across the ocean. Welcome to Voice of the Sea. In this episode, we're on board the Falkor, learning about how scientists map the ocean floor in the Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument, the home of the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands. Scientists are looking at the shapes and sizes of volcanoes on the sea floor in order to better understand the 45 million year history of the Hawaiian island chain, which will help answer questions such as why the more recent islands are forming at larger sizes. We'll meet oceanographer Chris Kelly, graduate student Jonathan Tree, and marine technician Colleen Peters. We catch up with these researchers as they prepare to leave for a 30-day research cruise aboard the Falkor. The Falkor is a 272-foot research vessel with a 23-person full-time crew and a capacity for 18 researching scientists. The ship itself boasts an amazing array of scientific equipment, from wet labs and seawater capabilities to remotely operated vehicles and multiple sonar systems.
This is the science control room, so no matter what anybody else says, this is where the magic happens. So this is really the main area where the scientists will work to collect their data on these cruises.
The Schmidt Ocean Institute provides research cruises aboard the Falkor free of charge, with the intent of working to advance the frontiers of ocean exploration through innovative technologies.
The organization, the Institute, was founded back in 2009 by Eric and Wendy Schmidt, really for one primary purpose, and that was to help accelerate the pace at which ocean science is being conducted.
All scientists are required to share data that they collect aboard the Falkor with the goal of furthering exploration and discovery. Chris Kelly welcomed me aboard the Falkor and gave me a tour of the ship, including the control room. The control room is the most high-tech center that I've ever seen aboard a research vessel. Chris, here we are in the control room. It sort of looks like something out of the Starship Enterprise.
Yep, it sure does.
How does it work?
The main monitors that the science team is looking at all the time are these four right in front, and these other ones are more for the marine technicians. So of these four, we typically, on top, we have the display from one multi-beam sonar system. This is usually the deeper system, the EM302, and on this other top display is the other multi-beam system, which is a little bit higher frequency, the EM710 system.
Sonar is the use of sound to navigate, communicate, or detect objects. Sonar comes in all shapes and sizes, from very low to very high frequency. In active sonar, sounds are sent out, and then the user listens for the echo return of the sound. Marine mammals use active sonar to find food and other objects. Humans use active sonar to look for fish or map the ocean floor. Military applications of sonar also vary and include both active sonar and passive listening sonar. In passive sonar, the user listens for sound made by boats, whales, or other organisms. Some sonar is harmful to marine mammals, while other types appear to have little or no effect. As part of Chris Kelly's research, his team is trying to understand the effect of multi-beam mapping sonar on marine mammals. So the maps that you were showing me with the data all compiled, you don't get that at the time you're running the sonar.
No.
You get that later as you put the data together.
You get that later. So on this top screen here, you can see what a typical display would look like here. So that green area right up here shows the actual swath, the data swath. The blue triangle with the little blue stick coming out of the front of it, that's the ship, and that line shows the ship heading.
Oh.
So the ship is actually mapping in a swath sideways, coming out underneath it, so it shows you how wide the swath is, and then some of the features already. It's like you're looking down on top of the ship.
Next, marine technician Colleen Peters explains her job monitoring the complex sonar equipment to ensure that it is working properly. So the sonar is one of the major pieces of equipment that's on the Falkor.
Yeah, well, this ship has quite a few different sonars. The two that we're focused on for this project are both of the multi-beams. We have a shallow water and a deep water multi-beam. So they'll give different resolutions in the data. So with the shallow water multi-beam, when you're in shallower water, you'll get higher detail than if you use the deep water multi-beam in shallow water. So that's why we have the two, to have complementary data sets to cover the whole area that they're trying to survey, which is from 50 meters to 4,000 meters. So when we have the shallow water sonar and we go into deeper water, then we need to be aware to turn it off, otherwise we're going to get artifacts in our deep water sonar.
So you don't use the shallow water and the deep water sonar at the same time?
We do.
Oh, you do?
We do. We'll use them both at the same time, but when it's too deep for the shallow sonar, then we have to turn it off. So we have to be paying attention to what the depth is, so we can turn the shallow one on and off accordingly.
And was there anything particularly exciting or interesting about this project for you?
Well, just mapping things that haven't been mapped before is the exciting part, because you almost always find new things. So I like not knowing what's going to turn up on the screen. That's what makes it really interesting.
Turn your love of the ocean into a lifelong career. Join NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, as we unlock the secrets in the deep oceans, track rapidly moving storms, model climate trends, protect and preserve our marine resources, and so much more. It's all in a day's work at NOAA. Find a career that makes a world of difference, enriching life through science, service, and stewardship. NOAA.
Welcome back to Voice of the Sea. Chris, Colleen, and the Falkor team solved the mystery of ancient rocks found in the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands. These rocks appeared to be too old to be part of the Hawaiian archipelago, and in fact they discovered that at least one of the seamounts in the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands is actually made of two volcanoes. The younger volcano is part of the Hawaiian archipelago at about 20 to 30 million years old, but the older volcano, at about 80 to 90 million years old, appears to have first formed in the eastern Pacific Ocean basin.
Why do we care about these structures on the surface or the floor of the ocean?
If we're going to understand what's important habitat to the animals, we have to see what the habitat looks like. One of the findings we think we know now is that not all of these seamounts were created by the Hawaiian hotspot.
Really?
Some of these seamounts here were actually already on the seafloor when the hotspot was going off, and they were actually they were created elsewhere in the Pacific, specifically in the eastern side of the Pacific. The calculated age right now for several of these is around 80 to 90 million years old, so they date back to the Cretaceous period.
When the dinosaurs were around.
Dinosaurs were around, and that matters. If you're trying to understand the geological history of the Hawaiian Islands, you have to know what was made here. This is a seamount called Bank 9, and it was a very curious feature because we knew that it came up shallow, consistent with a Hawaiian origin.
And that's the red part here, that's the shallow part.
That's the red part up here. But there had been a dredging effort that was carried out on the seamount before it became a monument and a reserve. And they had dredged what they thought was the south portion of the seamount. Of course, they didn't have this imagery before.
Right.
And they thought they were just dredging along a ridge that was extending south of this feature, and they actually wound up dredging right about here, and they got rocks that were really old, that date back to the Cretaceous period. So then they were trying to figure this out. Well, it's Cretaceous, but it comes up really shallow. Now that we've mapped it, what we think is happening is this isn't just one, this is two seamounts that have come together essentially. So this older flat top seamount is of Cretaceous age, was already on the seafloor. Then this volcano right up here then erupted right on the northern boundary of this older one. So now they're kind of merged together, and yet they differ in age by 60 million years. So this is again around 20 to 30 million years, and this is 80 to 90 million years, but they've come together to form a mosaic of two. So this was completely unknown at that time, and the mystery is solved.
As a biologist or a scientist then, like, what was the significance of you getting to go on this research cruise and do work up in the monument.
What interests me is the relationship between animals or animals community and the substrate. What types of animals do you find on this type of topography? What type of animals do you find on this other type of topography? So again, being able to actually map and see the seafloor in detail like this is the first step for my research interests.
And why is it important that we understand what kind of animals live down in these deeper depths if we don't eat them or make them into jewelry?
At these depths, particularly on over 1,000 meters or so, I'm very concerned about manganese crust mining activities that will likely occur in the future.
Why? What about the manganese that people need?
Well, first of all, here in the Central Pacific, we have the richest manganese crusts of anywhere in the world. And by richest, the most commercially valuable because they have a very high cobalt content and other rare earth elements and other things that have commercial value. Over time, we are going to exhaust our supplies of these minerals, these elements that we use for so many things. We're going to exhaust our terrestrial reserves of these minerals, and we will turn our attention to the seafloor where there are vast quantities of these crusts.
But in doing that, we're disrupting the habitat in these communities of the deep sea animals that you're talking about.
That's correct. If we know nothing about these communities and this commercial mining activity takes off, then they could select an area to mine that has very extensive biological communities on them. And when they start the mining process, they will undoubtedly destroy most of anything because they actually have to extract the substrate that the animals are living on. You can't do that without killing the animals. The way I look at it is we have an opportunity to actually provide data useful for creating management policy before it actually begins.
Which is something pretty rare.
It's very rare. We usually wind up making mistakes and then trying to correct those mistakes after the fact. Problem in the deep sea is when you disrupt and destroy deep sea animals, it can take extremely long periods of time for the communities to recover.
The University of Hawaii's Sea Grant College program focused on Hawaii's coasts and its communities through sustainable development, safe seafood supply, sustainable coastal tourism, hazard resilience, and healthy coastal ecosystems. Hawaii's Sea Grant.
Welcome back to Voice of the Sea. Graduate student Jonathan Tree shows me his gravimeter, which he uses to search for the center of ancient underwater volcanoes using density differences in the ocean floor. Okay, Jonathan, you're going to show me the gravimeter?
Yeah, so this is our gravimeter, and along with the gravimeter, we have its power control supply, and all of the data actually gets logged into this laptop right here, where we can see the data coming in real time. And that's what we're actually looking at right now, is the gravity that is being measured at our point right here.
Is it actually measuring gravity?
It's truly measuring the gravitational signal from the Earth right now. We use this instrument to measure basically density differences, what we're really interested in. And so what happens with lava flows is when they go onto the surface, they have the bubbles in them, as some of you may have seen in the basalts that we see around the islands. But along what we call rift zones, which is where a lot of the eruptions are centered, or at least they're sourced from the rift zone, they inject a thing called a dike. And a dike is basically a magma-filled crack. And so if any of the magma solidifies while it's still underground, it doesn't get as bubbly as the ones that get onto the land. And so there's a density difference there. And so the ones with bubbles in it are less dense. The ones without the bubbles are more dense, and we can actually image this using the gravity because if it's more dense, it actually weighs more. And so that's all the gravimeter is measuring, is the weight of an object.
So this is just your data output, right?
Right, so this is how we see the data, visualize the data. This controls all of the power and electronics, but the actual gravimeter sits inside of this shell, and it's only a unit that's about this big. And it's attached to gyros that actually keep it level. So if it's not level, we're measuring something that's not straight down. We're actually measuring something at an angle, so it can change the gravity. So we have to keep it completely stable and as flat as possible, which is a challenge on a rocking ship, right? So we actually ran into this problem on our first leg where we were rocking back and forth so much so that the gyros that are in there couldn't keep up with the movement and had actually shut themselves off. And so that's when we get all the warning red lights of bad data and all that stuff goes on. So this is actually the gravimeter that we are using to measure the gravity.
We can't take a look at it, can we?
So it requires me to actually take this shell apart and look at it, which is a little bit of a process. And the reason it has a shell is because it's on a foreign vessel, and this is a US gravimeter, and the technology around the gyros is actually a US military concern.
No way.
So yeah, the gyros are so good on this gravimeter that the US military would like us to not reveal the technology to anybody else. It's a big secret, actually.
Do you know what it looks like?
I do know what it looks like. It doesn't really look like anything but like a little black box. And so sitting inside the little black box is actually a magnet that is suspended by an electric current. And so you have a little metal solenoid that's sitting in an electrical current. And because of the magnetism, it's able to suspend itself in space. And how much it gets pulled down or changes level is how we actually measure the gravity. So normally, if a ship has a spot for a gravimeter, which this ship didn't, and you would want to install it in the center of the ship, as close to sea level as you can, where it doesn't experience any of the rolling or any of the pitching as the ship is moving along, and it can actually measure things more accurately. But this is actually the only place that we can put it on this ship, and so it experiences a little bit more of the rocking than average, but it's done well, and the filters that we use to get these types of noisy data out actually do quite a good job of filtering out any of the effects of the ship moving or vibrations on the ship or anything like that.
So for you, what is the significance of getting to go up to the National Monument and do your work there?
We don't actually get to go to the monument as much anymore since it's been declared a monument. It's becoming increasingly hard to get cruises up there. And so having the opportunity to get this gravimeter on this ship while we're there enables us to collect data that may not be collected for years to come or maybe 10, 20 years from now. So we actually have a unique opportunity to start looking at the gravity signatures of these volcanoes and reveal their true structures.
Why is understanding the structures of these volcanoes important?
So as the volcanoes sink, the corals basically grow all the way on top of the volcano. And so Midway Island is what we call an atoll, and so these are just flat-topped seamounts, and what has happened is the volcano has sunk beneath the ocean, but coral growth has actually kept up with the sinking. And as the coral has grown over, it masks what the true volcano used to look like. And so we can see its rift zones or its ridges that come out of the bottom of the carbonate platform. So we kind of know where to look for the rift zones, but we don't know where the volcanic centers were. And that's what gravity helps us do. It helps us look through the carbonate platforms at the true structure at the volcanoes and be able to look for magma chambers and something that might be hiding under the carbonate platform. So this is kind of what we end up looking at. This is what happens after we reduce our gravity due to which direction we're going. So gravity actually is affected by which direction you're heading relative to the spin of the Earth. So if you're going with the spin of the Earth, you're actually flinging yourself ever so slightly off of the Earth, lessening the gravity that you measure. Or if you're heading against it, you're actually driving yourself closer to the center of the Earth, increasing the gravity relative to what it should be. So we account for that, and we also account for the gravity due to the entire Earth. And once we strip all of that away, we're left with the gravity that makes up the mass hidden in these islands. And so this is a contour map of actual island or atolls and seamounts in the Northwest Hawaiian Islands. And we want to strip that away. And so we kind of do a model of what the gravity looks like associated with those masses. And so we want to strip that away. And once all of that is done, we're looking at another map that we were just looking at. And this is the density differences that we were talking about. And then these are the landslide scarps, and the yellows are where you see volcanic centers. And sometimes they lie in the center, but other times they actually lie where we think landslides have occurred. This is the satellite gravity, which is, as you can see, a little bit smoother and washed out. And then this is the ship track gravity. So our black lines along this satellite map are actually the gravity that we measured in our plotting right here.
And then what do you do with that knowledge?
What we do with that knowledge is we kind of try to tell the story of how Hawaii grew and changed over the past, say, 45 million years. So the Hawaiian archipelago is also part of the Hawaiian emperor chain, but it's the 45 million years of true Hawaiian growth. And the entire chain actually spans an 80 million year history. And so being able to put together the story over 45 million years is something that is very interesting. So a lot of people look at Pu'u'o and Kilauea and they know a lot about how the eruptions work now, but the eruptions didn't work that way in the past maybe, or maybe volcanoes were bigger, they were smaller, and that's something that we see along the chain is we see a significant difference in the shapes and the sizes of these volcanoes. So we kind of want to know why all of a sudden they got big and why there's so much volcanism now and not so much a long time ago.
And do you have any idea why that is?
I've actually done a little bit of research into why this could be, and we want to know maybe the temperature of the actual hotspot has been changing. So if it got hotter, maybe it produced more magma, or if its chemistry changed and it was able to melt more of the mantle material in the plume of the hotspot. So we kind of look at how that has changed over the course of the 45 million years with rocks that we have and the chemistry of the rocks that we look at, and we kind of look at these differences as they change over 45 million years and get the bigger picture of what Hawaii's been doing for that long time.
Have you found anything about Papahanaumokuakea Monument that surprised you?
Yes, there's some very interesting things. So landslides are very common throughout a volcano's lifespan. So even Loihi, the most infant volcano in the Hawaiian chain, is having landslides very frequently. There's been large landslides off of Oahu and large landslides off of Mauna Loa. So we know that these things occur, but we don't quite know why they occur or when they occur, how frequently. And so looking up the monument along the chain, we can see the actual scars from these landslides.
So does that have any prediction then for what might happen, say, on the Big Island or on Maui that are still, the shield still appears to be intact?
Yeah, so we can see the faults and everything geologically developing in real time on the Big Island right now. And we can maybe project into sometime in the future, a couple million years from now, that might be where the coalesce of the Big Island will be.
And is it something that will happen in our lifetime, or people's real estate or lives might be at stake?
So these volcanoes, they take about 2 million years maybe to form and die. And since Kilauea is maybe right in the middle, Mauna Loa is right on her way out, this will definitely take longer than one lifetime to form. So we're looking at million-year timescales in geology, which is one of the hardest ways to think about time. It's inconceivable.
Thanks for watching Voice of the Sea. Exploring Our Fluid Earth is the dynamic curriculum developed by the University of Hawaii's Curriculum Research and Development Group. The award-winning Fluid Earth and Living Ocean textbooks are now interactive and online. New activities, updated content, and a teacher community. Exploring Our Fluid Earth is now freely available. Find out more at exploringourfluidearth.org.
The Curriculum Research and Development Group in the College of Education at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. CRDG's training roots go back over 40 years. Through professional development programs, curriculum workshops, research on teaching methodology, individualized school and district training, and so much more. The Curriculum Research and Development Group, improving schools, improving education. CRDG.